May the 4th be with you! That's right, it's Star Wars Day, which means that you finally have a good reason to use the rest of the party favors left over from Alien Day. With everybody talking about a certain galaxy far, far away, it made me wonder what Electronic Gaming Monthly thought of Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. What were their favorite Star Wars games? As it turns out, EGM reviewed a total of 49 Star Wars games between 1989 and 2008. What makes that number all the more impressive is that it covers a whole bunch of different genres, including traditional action, vehicular combat, outer space dogfights, kart racers, and even a one-on-one fighting game. Of course, with a library this vast, the review crew couldn't cover everything. But I think you'll agree that we have an epic list on our hands. Today we're going to count down the best and worst Star Wars games using Electronic Gaming Monthly's own words and scores. There's no editorializing here, we're just going to focus on what the critics said at the time. So watch out, because everybody shoots first when EGM ranks Star Wars.
Star Wars. It's great in the arcade. Whoa! TIE fighters! Fireballs! Coming right at me! Watch the laser towers. Aim for the tops. Picking the cannons. Use the force. They're coming too fast. It's late! It's late! My shields are gone! All right! I'm going in!
Oh, some game, huh?
Some game!
In a galaxy of video games, there is only one. Star Wars, the arcade game.
Alright, we're kicking things off with number 49, Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones on the Game Boy Advance. This little sucker should thank its lucky damn stars Mortal Kombat Advance is around to take some of the heat directed at slopped-together Game Boy Advance games. It's like the enemies, controls, and graphics were all conceived in 3 separate, lesser-developed nations. Simple abilities are totally absent, and everyone's apparently out to get you. You'll get shot by training droids, punched by robots, and kicked by fighter pilot-looking enemies who probably just saw the commotion and wanted in. It's one of the worst games I've ever played. Number 48, Star Wars Super Bombad Racing on the PlayStation 2. Cool, super deformed characters and a kart racing game on the PlayStation 2? What could possibly go wrong? Apparently, almost everything. Once the novelty of the Star Wars license wears off, it becomes painfully obvious that this game is a total waste of time. It looks like nothing more than a high-res PlayStation 1 game with some major clipping problems. And the slowdown! Man, some of it is just painful to watch. Number 47, Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith on the Nintendo DS. Revenge returns to the time-honored tradition of so many Star Wars games. It's not fun, and it makes you question your original high opinion of the franchise as a whole. My biggest gripe is the controls. Perhaps they work okay on the Game Boy Advance SP, but the DS is big enough that having to rely so much on the shoulder buttons to block the truly endless hordes of cheap baddies is hand-crampingly burdensome. Then there's the last generation gameplay. It's predictable, repetitive, and makes no real use of the DS touchscreen. The game is not offensively bad. I actually enjoyed figuring out how to beat certain bosses, but even regular bad crap like this makes me want to plot my revenge. Number 46, Star Wars Episode 1 Jedi Power Battles on the PlayStation. It would have been one thing if this game was strictly a platformer or a side-scrolling beat-em-up. But the developers tried to do both, creating a frustrating mix suffering from shoddy-looking graphics and loose control. Forget about being able to pull off quick jumps and blocks. Seems as if the levels were designed with more attention to the accuracy within the Star Wars universe than making them fun. Number 45, Star Wars Obi-Wan on the Xbox. If Obi-Wan knew that Jedi training was going to be like this, chances are he would have gone into a more exciting career of pod racer repair. I had more fun forcing the young Padawan to perform continuous handsprings and cartwheels than I did actually fighting enemies. Part of the frustration is the clumsy control, but mostly it's just poorly executed, unoriginal concepts. You dive into a gaggle of lame enemies and start hacking away with your saber until they eventually fall. Wash, rinse, repeat. The crisp graphics are swell, but they come at the expense of bland backgrounds and loading times that would age an Ewan McGregor into an Alec Guinness. Number 44, Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back on the Nintendo Entertainment System. Take a moment to visualize this game. It never really takes the form of a high-action video game or a rock-steady role-playing game. It gets buried somewhere in between and slows down right in the middle. While the graphics are excellent for 8-bit and the storyline is great, the gameplay leaves something to be desired. Fun. Number 43, Star Wars: Lethal Alliance on the PlayStation Portable. Even if you're a Jedi-loving junkie, don't force yourself to play this cheapo Star Wars adventure. The other critics were totally spot on when it came to the slippery controls. In fact, I was my own worst enemy. I met my death more from stupidly falling off of ledges than I did by the blaster of any baddie. And too bad the auto-targeting is way more harmful than it is helpful. Accidentally shooting exploding barrels sure is a dumb way to die. Number 42, Star Wars: Dark Forces on the PlayStation. Sorry, LucasArts, your valuable Star Wars license isn't gonna save this game. First off, Doom games disgust me, as I've seen way too many of them. Dark Forces should have been one of the better ones, but it isn't. It's very choppy, and that's one thing that'll kill a game in this genre. It's almost as if the designers were in a hurry to port Dark Forces to the PlayStation, which can definitely do 3D better than this. I wouldn't be crazy about this game even if it were done well. It's simply an unoriginal, uninspiring attempt to milk Doom's popularity. Number 41, Star Wars: Jedi Knight Jedi Academy on the Xbox. You can always make a great game, on paper. But what happens when a bantha takes a big crap on that paper? Well, you get Academy. All the right ideas, none of the execution. A Jedi in training with upgradable skills, an intriguing story based on the good trilogy, force powers, lightsabers, what could go wrong? First off, Academy looks and plays like a first-person shooter from a long time ago, with flat graphics and zero IQ enemies. The controls are horrid. If you are looking forward to this, then do yourself a favor and play Halo again while humming the Star Wars theme. Number 40, Star Wars Episode 3: Revenge of the Sith on the PlayStation 2 and Xbox. Like any Star Wars game, Revenge of the Sith gets a forced push from its production values alone. Heck, even a GameStar and an insurance adjuster would pump me up if it were set to the Star Wars music. But look past the gloss, and it's clear that Sith runs out of fun Jedi tricks. Too many levels center on mindless droid hacking. Cool lightsaber boss battles step things up, but half the time I felt like I was winning through luck rather than skill. Number 39, Star Wars Rebel Assault 2: The Hidden Empire on PlayStation. Okay, being a big Star Wars fan, I must admit that the Star Wars theme is what saved this game from getting an even lower score. But at its heart, this game is complete nonsense. You run or fly through full-motion video sequences or pre-rendered backgrounds shooting at objects that are not part of the scenery. Yawn. The other areas involve you maneuvering your craft around various obstacles. Snore. Make matters worse, the control of these crafts is worthless. Number 38, Star Wars Starfighter Special Edition on the Xbox. When this game first came out on PlayStation 2, I was wowed by Starfighter's graphics. What a difference a year makes. Now, the bar has been raised and this special edition can't quite clear it. It's not that it's ugly, but compared to most Xbox games, it looks like the boring girl next door and makes the GameCube's rogue leader seem like Pamela Anderson.
Boy, where is he?
Here we go. Mark for the Death Star! Yes! Mom, ever heard of 90?
A force stronger than your parents doesn't want you playing.
And we're back with number 37, Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace on PlayStation. Episode 1 lacks that special something that you expect from a game based on such an incredible universe, but it's still cool to walk around and kick ass as a Jedi. But let's step back a bit and pretend that this isn't associated with Star Wars, that it's just some generic action-adventure game. As such, it's only average. It has decent gameplay and incredible music and dialogue, but not much else. Some levels are pretty tedious. Number 36, Star Wars Rebel Assault on the Sega CD. Even though Rebel Assault is loaded with full-motion flight and battle renderings, I just didn't find the game all that exciting. For one thing, the lack of colors really hinders gameplay at times. You couldn't tell where your ship was going, resulting in a crash. Flight controls also need to be improved because the ship moves awkwardly and sometimes feels unresponsive. It just doesn't do Star Wars justice. Number 35, Star Wars Bounty Hunter on the PlayStation 2. I'll give 50,000 credits to anyone who brings me those responsible for Bounty Hunter, dead or alive. Well, actually bring me them alive, because I want to ask them what went wrong with this potentially cool game. The generic, repetitive combat and drab graphics are the very definition of mediocrity, while the jittery movement anytime your view swings around is so jarring it literally gave me a headache. Number 34, Star Wars: The Force Unleashed on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox. I'm conflicted about The Force Unleashed. On one hand, it's easy to see the effort the developers put into the story, the ambitious graphical detail, and the significant use of the actual Force. It all makes The Force Unleashed seem like a game deserving of the Star Wars name. On the other hand, it's hard to overlook the rough execution. The levels are so huge that they border on sprawling, but in that bad way that makes you wish the levels would just end already. An ambitious, yet ultimately dissatisfying effort. Number 33, Star Wars on the Nintendo Entertainment System. The movie set standards that the industry is still trying to equal. The company can perform magic. The game, unfortunately, does neither, and it's just flat and ordinary. Not enough variety, the action never gets intense, and it just doesn't have the Star Wars excitement. A big disappointment. Number 32, Star Wars Arcade on the Sega 32X. Being a big fan of the movie and action games, I was expecting a little bit more. The scrolling is really good, but the missions just got too repetitive and boring. The two-player simultaneous mode is a great addition, but there just wasn't enough to do. Just shoot TIE fighters over and over. The graphics are decent, but they could have used a bit more texture mapping. Star Wars fans may get into it, but I don't enjoy flight sims. Number 31, Star Wars Demolition on the PlayStation. I think we've seen enough variations on the theme. What's next? Star Wars Tennis? Yeah, it's getting ridiculous, but I can't knock it because I'm sick of the license. Especially when the game itself is decent. It's similar to Vigilante 8, but I don't remember the graphics in V8 looking as sparse as these. It almost looks like certain elements are just plopped onto the background without any blending. The structures look flimsy as well. Still, even with the ugly stuff, if it's vehicle combat you crave, you can do worse. Number 30, Star Wars Battlefront 2 on the PlayStation Portable. Man, I was all ready to totally dig this game. A faithful translation of the home console version, plus extra missions where you kill Ewoks and Gungans? The revised control scheme is a pretty good substitute once you learn to use the D-pad for target lock-on. Even the quirky space combat is easy to adapt to. Except, what blows a Death Star-sized hole into the whole experience is the utter terrible slowdown in the multiplayer, which is the primary reason most people are gonna buy this game. Number 29, Star Wars Battlefront Renegade Squadron on the PlayStation Portable. Just like you know how every Star Wars movie starts with the iconic text crawl, you'll know right away that Renegade Squadron offers merely a modest update to the previous two Battlefront games. But that doesn't mean that the game reeks like Rancor poo. In fact, the online play is definitely worth picking up a blaster for. But while the multiplayer rocks, the appeal of the campaign and character customization lasts about as long as Darth Maul's screen time. Number 28, Star Wars on the Game Boy. Game Boy, go hibernate, will ya? I hope the programmers of Star Wars are preparing to create a full-color portable version when Nintendo wakes up and creates a color Game Boy system. In color, with stable graphics support, Star Wars would be exciting and challenging. But as it is, nah. Number 27, Star Wars, Masters of Teras on the PlayStation. I'm really disappointed with Teras. The game is such a marvel to look at. The backgrounds are fantastic and the character animation is top-notch. The ability to take control of so many different Star Wars characters is totally cool. But unfortunately, the gameplay just doesn't cut it. The control is poor and the combo system is more about memorization than actual skill. It's too bad because this game really could have been a classic. Number 26, Star Wars Episode 1 Battle for Naboo on the Nintendo 64. I'm all for mindless battling, especially when it involves the Episode 1 theme. Seriously, if you liked Rogue Squadron, then it's a good bet that you'll like Naboo even more. The missions are manageable and for the most part, really fun. The targeting system is a little touchy though. It takes a precise hit to destroy the baddies. Aside from the lack of a save option, Naboo is a decent game. Number 25, Star Wars Racer Revenge on the PlayStation 2. After playing this game, I know why 9 out of 10 Jedis recommend using the Force to win pod races. How else are you going to win a race at speeds of 500 miles per hour while Vaseline is being smeared across your windshield? Well, the blurry graphics make it look like it is whenever you hit the turbo. A handful of dark tracks even gave me a headache, but luckily those are the exception. Most of the courses are bright enough to navigate well, and ramming fellow racers into the wall while careening down them is pretty damn intense.
In a galaxy far, far away, you are needed as a rebel pilot. Become one in the Return of the Jedi Death Star Battle Home video game.
Your mission, fly Millennium Falcon through enemy force field while battling TIE interceptors. Ultimately penetrate and destroy the Death Star before its completion. But beware, the Death Ray can stop you.
Time is running out. Save the rebels. Play Return of the Jedi Death Star Battle from Parker Brothers. If you can stand the pressure.
And we're back with number 24, Star Wars Episode 2, The Clone Wars on Xbox. Here are some definitive Clone Wars moments. Number 1, when yappy wing woman Luminara finally shuts her advice-spewing Jedi pie hole. Number 2, when Obi-Wan gets stuck on the side of a building during a speeder bike chase. Number 3, any of the 50+ times I piloted a ship and blew up endless waves of boring foes. Yeah, solo missions are a drag, but not all is wrong with the Force. Thank the midichlorians for the wonderful online modes that go beyond the simple kill 'em all and let George Lucas sort 'em out. It's a solid choice for avid Xbox Live players. Number 23, Star Wars Jedi Starfighter on the PlayStation 2. LucasArts' ad touts this game as being Force-powered, and after playing it, I've figured out that those are code words for same old shit. How many times do we need to dogfight brainless enemy ships in the same tired way? I hoped the new Force powers would spice things up, but it's hard to get excited over another Matrix-style time freeze or erecting a shield. If that's what Yoda taught Luke, we'd be falling asleep in the theater. At least the weapons on the non-Jedi ships are flashier, and co-op play makes the ho-hum missions better. It's not enough to justify rebuying this rehash, but if you own a Darth Vader helmet or X-Wing model, maybe it's worth a rental. Number 22, Super Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back on the Super Nintendo. I think my problem was that my hopes were too high. Yes, the game follows the film's story with excellent cinematic displays and the music is well orchestrated, but the gameplay totally blows. Moving Luke and the other Star Wars characters turns out to be a struggle. What's worse is that you're totally bombarded with enemies that take an infinite number of hits before they finally die. It's a disappointing kart. Number 21, Star Wars Rebel Strike Rogue Squadron 3 on the GameCube. Like the two previous Rogue Squadron games, Rebel Strike gives you a chance to live out your greatest Star Wars Starfighter combat fantasies. This trip around the galaxy also features an alternate itinerary, as now you're periodically forced to face action outside of the cockpit. Although I wish more flight missions found their way into the final product, those included are enough reason to try out Rebel Strike. If you're expecting the ultimate all-encompassing Star Wars game, then you might want to move along. Move along. Number 20, LEGO Star Wars on the PlayStation 2 and Xbox. Finally, some blatant product placement that I can get behind. LEGO Star Wars may be a simple action platformer with a crappy camera that you'll curse. For me at least, this is one of those times when cool characters and visuals can make up for the sometimes flawed gameplay. The game's short length, infinite continues, and co-op mode may make this an excellent rental for older folks, but kids will be happy to replay the levels to death and track down every last secret. Number 19, LEGO Star Wars 2, the original trilogy on Xbox, GameCube, and PlayStation 2. You gotta give credit to the brilliant blockhead who forced this awesome yet fundamentally bizarro idea on LucasArts. Sure, the sequel is every bit as ridiculous as the original, but that's what gives it its playful charm. Witnessing Gamorrean guards rock out air guitar style is the type of hilarious hijinks that you won't see in an adult Star Wars game, but for LEGO Star Wars it actually makes sense. Plus, it's just more fun to play levels based on the original trilogy. If only the spastic new ship battles weren't a complete mess to control. And if you're a completist, then may the patience be with you. It'll take a good week or two before you blow your blaster on all the secret goodies. Number 18, Star Wars Starfighter on the PlayStation 2. Starfighter isn't the PlayStation 2 killer app that I was hoping for. The visuals, although slick, get choppy, and the mission designs are nothing special. Later sorties suffer from the chronic flaw of the space combat genre. They start out easy, last too long, and become impossibly hard near the end, and thus force you to repeat them over and over. It's tedious. Still, this game does get plenty right. It tosses an enormous amount of enemies at you. You really feel like you're part of a battle, and that's true to the epic scale of the films. Number 17, Star Wars Republic Commando on Xbox. As the leader of super soldier quadruplets, I'm glad that my brothers are fairly smart, even if I do have to take the lead when the Federation droids and Trandoshan slavers get a little rough. Because I know when I charge into battle against all odds and catch one too many blaster shots, the boys will jolt me back to life. Well, assuming they don't all get wiped out. Commando's squad control aspects aren't particularly complex, but they work well enough. And the single-player campaign is short and action-packed, spanning the gap between episodes 2 and 3. Number 16, Star Wars Demolition on the Dreamcast. We're at the point where just about every type of game has been Star Wars-ized now that the license has been attached to a vehicle destruction game. Created by veteran developers Luxoflux, it's not a surprise that Demolition plays a lot like Vigilante 8, the big-name game that put them on the map. If you've already played that, then you'll be more or less familiar with this one. I like Demolition, but it left me wondering how good it could have been if Luxoflux had really taken advantage of the Dreamcast. Number 15, Star Wars Jedi Starfighter on the Xbox. Call me cuckoo, but if someone was searing my backside with lasers, I think I'd scooch out of the way. It's a concept that never occurs to the big baddie ships in Jedi Starfighter. They just sit there and take it until they go boom. The fun here comes from all the stuff that's thrown at you. Swarms of enemy ships, capital crafts, and planet-side structures bristling with things to blow up. Even scurrying little clone troopers. The missions are so hectic that a few of them got confusing, but it all hangs together as a satisfying, if not exactly deep, experience. Number 14, Star Wars on the Game Gear. For a translation of what was originally a very good game on a superior system, Star Wars for the Game Gear comes off rather well. Even with the lower graphics and sound, fans of the 16 and 8-bit versions of the blockbuster science fiction trilogy will feel right at home with this one. The game does change the movie around some, but hey, that's half the surprise! This one sports good control, too. Number 13, Star Wars Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast on the Xbox. Raven Software went with the toss everything into a pot and stir strategy while developing Outcast, and the end result is a surprisingly strong brew. Part first-person shooter, part third-person adventure, the game gives players a giant world to explore and an overwhelming number of skills to master. The title's biggest strength is that it envelops you into the Star Wars universe. While playing, you'll really feel like a badass Jedi. But the downside is that the game is nearly impossible to beat without having a walkthrough strategy guide at hand.
This is madness.
No trainers.
Trainers are cool.
Trainers are cool.
So you're gonna let us in?
So I'm gonna let you in. Go ahead.
Is the Force with you?
And we're back with number 12, Star Wars Shadows of the Empire on the Nintendo 64. After all the hoopla surrounding Shadows, I was expecting a lot more than what was presented here. Essentially what you get is a poor first-person shooter on top of an awesome Hoth battle sequence. Let's just say that the first 4 stages are to die for. After that, you get a mishmash of first-person, racing, and skeet shooting. Probably the most irritating thing about the first-person portion is the horrid control. Dash Rendar is a clumsy beast for sure. He doesn't sidestep, his boots need traction, and other than the Doom-style view, the view is blocked by Dash's body. Too bad this happens in over half of the game. Number 11, Star Wars Episode 1 Jedi Power Battles on the Dreamcast. In the past year, the Dreamcast has hosted its fair share of PlayStation ports, some good, most bad. Jedi Power Battles falls into the former category, providing Star Wars fans with a game that is light years ahead of the PlayStation original. The graphics are breathtaking, the characters animate well, and they're sharply detailed. The environments are comprised of lush, nearly photorealistic features. The narrative follows the film closely, making the action all the more engaging. A few minor flaws keeps the title a stone's throw away from brilliance. Number 10, Star Wars Episode 1 Racer on the Dreamcast. Finally, a game that restores my belief that the Force can exist in a good video game. Racers are a dime a dozen these days, but I have to say that this is a unique racing game with its own merits outside of the Star Wars license. Sure, it helps to have Duel of the Fates trumpeting melodramatically as you scream down tunnels, but that's only the icing on the cake. Number 9, Super Star Wars Return of the Jedi on the Super Nintendo. The latest installment in the Star Wars saga is more like Jedi in that you can't just run through the levels. You will definitely have to take your time and carefully move through the levels. Excellent graphics and nice Mode 7. Number 8, Star Wars Battlefront 2 on the Xbox and PlayStation 2. Battlefront 2 seems like what the first Battlefront should have been to begin with. There's so much that's familiar and repurposed that your copy of the first game will be rendered irrelevant. The best thing about Battlefront is how it's not overly complex. If you can see it, you can shoot it, capture it, or pilot it. Hooray for accessibility! Number 7, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2, The Sith Lord on Xbox. This game has its share of shortcomings, with the most glaring one being the pitiful story. Nothing really happens or is explained during the first 20 hours of play, and just when the developers finally decide to turn it up a notch, here comes the ho-hum finale. Not good. Overall, don't expect to be wowed like the original. Number 6, Star Wars Rogue Squadron on the Nintendo 64. It makes sense. Take the best parts of Shadows of the Empire and make an entire game out of that style of gameplay. But in addition to this, Rogue Squadron has incredible high-res graphics, tons of voice, and an overall solid feel. On the downside, some of the missions get a bit repetitive, but luckily others have more interesting objectives that help to get things moving again. Number 5, Star Wars Battlefront on the PlayStation 2 and Xbox. Someone made a video game out of all those Star Wars toys and imaginary battles that you had as a kid. It's a dream come true for any wars geek, old or new. That is, if you can handle the choppy action, which can look like someone is stop-motion capturing plastic Darth Vader action figures. Still, fun I had, from blasting battle droids on Naboo, to taking down lumbering AT-ATs with tow cables. It helps a lot that the field is littered with dumb computer-controlled bots. They provide a lot of cannon fodder and the illusion that the battles are huge and epic straight from the films. Number 4, Star Wars Rogue Squadron 2 Rogue Leader on the GameCube. It's rather ironic. The best Star Wars game I've ever played is the one that follows the movies as closely as possible. Rogue Leader does just that, and it's aided by some of the most incredible graphics, sound effects, and music that you've ever heard or seen. Sure, this stuff ain't original. It's ripped straight from the films. But no Star Wars game has ever combined all the elements this well. This is the reason to own a GameCube, not Luigi's Mansion. Number 3, Star Wars Episode 1 Racer on the Nintendo 64. Even though Racer is based on what is easily the most anticipated movie of all time, you don't have to be a Star Wars fan to enjoy it. Racer is one of the fastest paced games I've ever seen on any system, immersing you completely in the Star Wars universe. You'll actually be afraid to close your eyes while playing it. The only thing missing from this game is a story mode, but the graphics and the gameplay more than make up for it. Number 2, Super Star Wars on the Super Nintendo. This is a dream come true for Star Wars fans. The game is so well done that you can't help getting hooked. The graphics are great, the music is absolutely phenomenal, and the gameplay is fast and action-packed from beginning to end. This is the best movie-to-game translation I've ever seen. Encore, please! Empire Strikes Back! And finally, at number 1, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic on the Xbox. Both PC role-playing fans and console gamers weaned on less hardcore fare can sit back and bask in Knights of the Old Republic's magnificence. This is a role-playing game like no other, either on PC or on console. Knights of the Old Republic is like the movie that we all hoped Episode 1 would be. Enthralling plot, marvelous visuals and voice acting, deep immersion in the galaxy's many worlds with all the noble Jedi malarkey lightened up with the old school Episode 4 style humor. But the genius is the light and dark side choices that you're forced to make throughout. Add to this a bounteous side quest, tons of cool gear and nice touches like a well-designed map system, quest logs, and inventory management, and this is an RPG revolution every console gamer should experience.
So you think you're ready to pilot a Jedi Starfighter? Get in.
That flag is a Star Destroyer.
You're gonna dock, board it, and blow it up.
Ready? But...
Some guys just can't dock.
Prepare yourself for the sequel to the best-selling Star Wars game of all time. For the first time ever, fight in space. Fight as a Jedi. Fight the battles any way you want. Star Wars Battlefront 2 on November 1st. You fight again. Rated for teen.
Hey, thanks for watching me count down these classic reviews. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we have a whole playlist full of EGM Ranks episodes that are just like this one. We cover Mario, Sonic, Final Fantasy, Batman, Twisted Metal, Burnout, Metal Gear, Street Fighter, Ninja Gaiden, and dozens more. Now, here's the question I have for you. What's your favorite Star Wars game? Yeah, we're gonna keep it simple for Star Wars Day. Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back next week with more reviews and a new episode of Review Crew. If that sounds good to you, then I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.